to our July Lunch and Learn. It was great to be with several of you last month for this content as well. And today we're going to be diving into trust as it relates to hiring the right people. A number of exciting things coming up for PHCC. Great reasons to join. Of course, the golf tournament is the big one coming up in August, and some other great events, more lunch and learns as well. So check your calendar for these events and the emails you'll get from Hillary. And today we're going to dive into this topic of hiring people you trust. My name is Daniel Halleck. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Wild Leaders. Been around PHCC for a few years before we became Titanium members, and have the pleasure of having worked with a number of members and just being a big fan of your association organization. So this is one of our ways to give back at the convention. Todd challenged us all to find ways to create, to add substantive value to the association. And so this is one of ours, is to give back by doing these lunch and learns, and a few other things I'll share at the end of today. But I'm really excited about this topic around hiring the people you trust, because I believe it's relevant to all of us. All of us are either have hired, are hiring, or will be hiring at some point in the future. It's just a matter of when. I've had some of these conversations with a few of you personally, so there's going to be some great relevance here, I know. As a reminder, Wild is all about trust, and our big tagline is that leadership equals trust. Everything we're focused on doing is building the factors that drive trust in organizations at the personal level, the team level, and the organizational level. Because when we have high trust, it reduces the friction that opens up the pathways for performance, productivity, and well-being. And there's a key connection today around hiring. And so that's what we're going to be diving into today. I like to share a couple rules of engagement every time to help us get the most out of our time today. I'm going to be interacting with you and asking you to come off mute, type things in the chat, and share your thoughts and perspectives. So I've got some content. I'm going to be inviting you as well. So 3 things I think will help us get the most out of our time today. First, this is not a test. I've got some perspectives and insights on how we can optimize hiring. My goal here is not to evaluate your hiring methods and tell you you're great or bad. This is an invitation to authentically learn and share with one another. And so I'm going to invite you to share what you do well and where you could grow, and know this is not a test. Start with yourself. Trust is always developed starting with ourselves. And so we can point to others, but if we point to ourselves first, we can then actually take the right actions to create change in our organizations. And then take a risk. There may be something that you're challenged to do or share that may require a safe risk to help you grow to your next level as your business and as a leader yourself. So if we do that, we're going to get the most out of our time today. I've shared this before in our last Lunch and Learn, and you would have seen this at the conference as well. A big part of what we are focused on is making the invisible visible. And I love the good old-fashioned iceberg, because it says that, hey, 10% of what's visible are the things we focus on, things like performance and results and the right systems, and things like our KPIs and our close rates and our average ticket, and, the things that we're actually paying attention to. And we know the invisible stuff is oftentimes what's below the surface and either blocking or unlocking our ability to make the most out of those visible things. So culture or motivation, trust, the invisible things, if we can move the needle on those, we know it'll help us get stuff done that we care about. Hiring is no different, because when it comes to hiring, we don't actually know somebody really well in many cases, and we are trying to ascertain and discern their ability to help us drive the things above the waterline, the visible stuff. And yet we're looking to understand and discern the invisible things about them to be able to help move the visible. When you meet somebody for hiring, even if they were referred to you, you don't fully know them. And you're testing them with questions, and they're putting their best foot forward. And so it's a contrived, artificial situation, which makes it more difficult for us as leaders and owners to understand what the candidate actually is, so we can hire the right person. I know some of you are saying, hey, Daniel, this isn't about hiring for me. I just can't even get talent at all. I mean, we have a competitive talent market. Great. We're going to talk about that too. How do we attract, recruit, select, and onboard talent is going to be tied into today's conversation. So I want to start with a question, and I'm going to ask you to put your answer in the chat. You can go look at the bottom of your navigation screen. You'll see a little cartoon dialog box that says chat. Click it. Even if you're on your phone or iPad, I would love to give you 60 seconds to give me your answer on this question. What would change in your business if you had the right people in the right positions? What would change in your business if you had the right people in the right positions? I'll give you 60 seconds. Put your answer in the chat. I'll read your comments as they come, and that will help me set the stage for where we're going to go. All right, 60 seconds. I'll put a timer on. Let's do it. Put it in the chat. Great stuff coming. I'll give you another 30 seconds. You're welcome to add a second comment if you like. If the first one spurred something or one of your peers, I'll start reading these out. Kathy, it would lessen the necessary focus, effort, and energy expended on training and maintaining the process. I'm going to ask you to come off mute and share a little bit about that, Kathy. Say more about why having the right people in the right positions would decrease the effort and energy for training and maintaining process. It's a great insight.
Well, if they're I mean, who's going to define right? Right in the right positions. But if they were the right fit and you had the bottom, the 90% bottom, the trust and all of that, it would make it easy. You could move a little faster pace in your business, right? Because they wouldn't need to have the constant reminders. That's my focus. They would be holding each other accountable. I wouldn't have to hold them accountable. We could move to new ideas and new innovations easier because we have that trust below the sea level.
That's great. Great insight. I love that ability to move faster, move smoother, less accountability, hand holding, because people are in the right place and they're able to execute and move. That's good. And Robert, you said less stress and more trust, be able to focus on business needs. If you're able to come off mute quickly, elaborate on that a little more. I think that there's some nuggets of wisdom there. Say more about why having the right people in the right positions would help lessen stress and increase focusing on business needs through trust.
Wouldn't have to be chasing them down to fix their issues so much and get them to do the job that you've asked them to do. You'd be able to focus on what needs to be done of the advertising and dealing with customers calling and other things.
That's spot on, Robert. I appreciate that. Less chasing them down. That's a great way to summarize that. And Jim, I'll ask you as well. Efficiency throughout our organization helps all employees and customers. Say more about the right people in the right positions as it ties to that efficiency and that knock-on effect. It's great insight.
Well, for employees, if we got the right people doing the right jobs, the rest of our employees, everybody else can concentrate on kind of piggybacking on what Robert had to say. And Robert, good to hear your voice, man. If all of our employees aren't worried, don't have to pick up a little slack for other employees, they can excel at what they're really good at, come up with good ideas that help our business, that type of thing. Just free up a little bit more of their time. And then as far as the customer part of it goes, as far as we're concerned, it helps keep our costs down if we can be more efficient, which is a good thing for our customers and ultimately a good thing for us. So
I love it.
That's by having the right people doing the right things.
Thanks for that, Jim, Robert, and Kathy. That sets the stage, I think, for the importance of this conversation. So that's good. I'm gonna I'm going to share my big idea for today, and then I'm going to get right into a handful of strategies. And I'm going to ask you to identify the one or two that are going to matter the most for you. Then we're going to come back around. I'm going to ask you to put in the chat what you're taking away from this, and we'll have a dialogue together. I'll invite you to come off mute again. We'll have a dialogue about what this means for you. So great way to set the stage. That tells me this is a topic that is worthwhile. And so I'm glad we're recording it for the audience as well. Here's my big idea today that we're going to unpack in detail. Carefully calibrating your hiring builds a culture of high trust and high performance. Carefully calibrating your hiring builds a culture of high trust and high performance. And this is one of those places I use that word carefully calibrating because when it comes to hiring, it's one of those proverbial go slow to go fast, measure many times and cut once. And when you do it right, I'm going to be sensitive to the talent market. You're in the labor market because I know it's not as simple as, hey, Daniel, I have candidates I have certified techs beating down my door. Tell me how to hire the best one. So I want to be sensitive to that too. But if we can carefully calibrate our hiring, it has a massive long-term effect. So I want to go into 4 movements in hiring people you trust and a couple strategies under each. And I'm going to take what I describe as an employee life cycle. If you think about before they know about you, as they're beginning to engage with you, as they actually get hired by you, and then as they get on board. And I think it's important to stitch those together. So I want to start with attracting people. The first thing when it comes to attracting the right talent, before we can even hire them, is building your employment brand. Build your employment brand. And when you think about this, you have a brand promise for your organization. We do this. You can go on the website and see the things you describe. I've noticed almost every service company, no matter the the trade, says that they will give you peace of mind. So that's a brand promise. It's also a generic brand promise because everybody does it, but that's one example. And we're going to make things easy for you. We do this. Now, I want you to consider that we tend to focus our brand on client, and that's key. So what's the employment brand? What's the story that a candidate will tell about you? And what I want to submit is that your entire website is as much an employment brand as it is a client brand. So even if you have a careers page that talks about your benefits and all the great things, techs or other talent are smart. They're going to look at your reviews. They're going to look at your entire website to see what you're about. So every page on your website is an employment page, not just the employment page. And so I would ask you a question for you. How is your story different? How is your story different? If you take 10 of your competitors, let me actually make it more personal. If we took you and lined you up against yourself, how would you compete against yourself? Because unfortunately, most of the employment brands I see in the services are kind of like vanilla ice cream. And vanilla ice cream is great, but I would never open a vanilla ice cream store because my parents like pralines and nuts and weird stuff in their ice cream, and my kids like sprinkles and sherbet and weird colors. And so what's your employment brand? What is unique about your business for clients that's also telling the story for your candidates? They're going to shop you like your clients shop you. Reviews are a big deal. Obviously, video can help, but what's going to authentically help them see what's unique about your employment brand? We could spend a lot of time on there, but what I would say is the takeaway from this key piece is this. Think about your employment brand, your brand to candidates, not just your brand to consumers and clients as well. So that's the first piece, and video is a nice way. If you have videos to differentiate you there, that can be helpful. I'm going to build on this and talk about recruiting. I'm going to give you 3 things: providing realistic job previews, incentivizing your recruiting team, and leaving candidates better than you found them. The first is realistic job previews. When I looked at lots of job postings for plumbing, heating, and cooling companies, and it's really amazing because, again, they all say the same thing, and everyone's promising the moon. We do this, we do this, we do this. We give you boots. We give you signing bonuses. We fill up your truck. You're not going to have to work after hours. You're not going to work at all. I mean, it's almost to the point where you're like, great, I get to join a job where I'm going to do no work. Now I get it because people are competing, but here's the problem. When you promise too much and you don't give people a realistic preview of the positive and the challenges of what they're going to get into, you're setting you and them up for a failure. And so as you interview in the interview process, depending on what stages you have in the recruitment process, we often make our recruitment one of two things, and we mix these up. Either we just focus on marketing to people and getting people to be attracted to us and want to join us, or we tighten the screws and interview them and focus on vetting them. And the problem is we often do the wrong thing at the wrong time. So early in the process, yes, focus more on evangelizing and what you do and get them excited. But along the way, you're going to have to move more and more towards like, I got to make a decision. So carefully identify, maybe it's a second interview. Maybe there's a place in the process, whether it's a ride along or somewhere else, where they're going to actually get a sense of what the job is going to really entail. I think this is especially important for trainees who don't know what they don't know. They don't know what the role is going to be. A seasoned person is going to be a little more experienced to know, okay, I've been around a few shops, I know what to look for, but providing a realistic job preview is key. And this comes back to knowing who you are and making sure that's communicated. And so when I look at that employment brand and realistic job preview, the biggest challenge is most companies don't really know who they are at an identity level. And so then they end up communicating vanilla ice cream. So if you know who you are, what your distinctives are, what your plan is, how do you communicate that distinctive clearly in your brand? But then importantly, when they actually start to engage with you, if you don't know who you are, they can't know you and trust you. And the recruitment process is a trust building process. So know who you are and make sure that's communicated so they know what they're going to be getting into and they can get excited. Realistically, I want a candidate to be thrilled about coming to work, and it's also still a job. And so if they're expecting it to be something that it's not, I'm setting me and them up for failure. Along with recruiting, when it comes to talent, incentivize your recruiting team. Your internal talent team is the best recruiting team because people talk to each other and they get to know the real story. And so both involving them in the process is key, but also how are you incentivizing your team to help you bring in talent? These are going to be the people they're going to be working with. They're going to help block or unlock success for them. Is there a referral bonus program when they bring people in? And I'm not talking just about the candidate. Some people give referral candidate bonuses, signing bonuses. Some people don't. That's a matter of principle or perspective. I don't even care about the candidate at this point because people will come if they know it's going to be a great place with a great culture, great training, great benefits, great pay. It's a whole package. And today, when I look at your talent in the trades is become the same level of recruitment, development, investments as talent for software engineers or physicians. And if I look at top software engineering companies and companies that recruit physicians, they give incentives because they know that software engineers know other software engineers and physicians know other physicians. So we need to treat our talent really like software engineers or physicians. That's just the reality today. And that's because of the legislative environment and the barriers to entry. Not everyone can just raise their hand and become a plumber. And that's actually in some ways good for your business because if it was so easy to become a plumber, then I could too, and our billable hourly rates would drop through the floor. And so there's a double-edged sword. It's hard to get talent, but also creates a barrier to entry, which makes you competitive and allows you to charge a premium. So it's a double-edged sword. Bottom line, you incentivize your recruiting team, and it's not just monetary, although that's a big piece of it. Lastly, for recruiting, leave candidates better than you found them. Leave candidates better than you found them. Most people treat recruiting processes like dating. And we're going to speed date and we're going to see if I like you and you like me. And there's a massive missed opportunity because unlike dating where you're going to find one partner and move on, when it comes to the candidate market, there are so many candidates out there and people come back around, and I'm singing with the choir. I know it looking at some of your faces. your reputation gets out there in the market. And so what if we thought about the recruiting process not just about, is this the right person? Can I vet them? Can I convince them that we're the right place? What if I treated it like, in addition to realistic preview, I don't know if every candidate coming in the door is going to get hired, but I do want to invest in them in a way that they would leave and they would say, I interviewed at this crazy plumbing company and I don't know, I didn't get the job, but I became a better person and plumber just by participating in their interview process. And I'll tell you what, if I can get a job there, I would. If something ever comes up and they call me back, I'd be thrilled to go there. And so we often only think about how do I land the fish in the boat? Not, is this the right fish I even want to serve up, and how do I send them back if I catch and release in a way that's going to leave them better? I'm going to give you one example. At Wild, we have a number of assessments that are not used for hiring, but can be used in hiring. One of our tools is called the Motivational Drivers Inventory. It's a powerful tool to help individuals understand what drives them, what drives their motivations, an invisible quality, and for teams to be able to understand what motivates the people around them. Imagine giving that to a candidate to say, we're getting far along in the process, and if you join our team, we certainly offer great benefits and salary and training, but we also invest in people as people, and we care about your growth long term. I'm going to give you an assessment that's going to give you insights about your motivations, what drives you. You don't need to give me the results. And this is not to decide if you're a good fit or not. This is our gift to you to invest in you as a potential future team member. Because if you join our team, we want you to understand your motivations and be able to create a career that you love. So I want to give this assessment to you, and all I'm going to do is we're going to set up a conversation. I'm going to ask you to share what you're comfortable about, what you learned about yourself. And if you were to join our team, how could we support you? Again, you're not using assessments in this case, to select them, although that's a great strategy, and I'll talk about that in a second. There's different assessments for that. But we often don't think about investing in our talent. And if you plan to be in business for more than 3 years, talent is going to come back around, and they will tell other people. And so in the same way you build a reputation, back to the employment brand, about your business from a client perspective, you're building your reputation about your business from an employment brand perspective. And I can look at many of you, you've seen people boomerang back to your business, or word gets out there and people come around and it comes back. I've seen this happen again and again. The best talent brands I've seen and I've worked with, they build an employment brand that extends all the way through their hiring process. And part of it's leaving candidates better than they found them. I gave you one example. You could get creative with what that looks like. So attracting and recruiting, those are key. Now let's move into the selection and the onboarding. How do I actually determine if I've got the right people in front of me? So I'm going to give you 4 things for selecting. And I differentiate between selecting and recruiting because recruiting is inviting somebody into the process. Selecting is the determining if you should actually hire them or not. And those are 2 separate but tightly joined processes. And many people confuse the two, and they focus on selecting too early and they scare away good candidates, or they only focus on recruiting throughout the whole process and they just take somebody in the door who may not be the right fit. So at some point, recruiting morphs into selection. So here's my 4 things. Know your scorecard, use structured interviews, invite participation in work samples, and leverage assessments. 4 things you can do to optimize your hiring. The most important is starting with your scorecard. I'm always amazed how owners don't quite know what they're looking for. And it makes sense. We're busy, but we're looking for all sorts of things. Make a narrow scorecard. What are the 3 things you need, or 5 things? Because you can't hire a person to do every single thing. And I see a lot of times with techs, the tech is both selling, their service, they're training apprentices, they're doing a lot of stuff. So what's your narrow scorecard? And then based on that narrow scorecard, pick narrow selection mechanisms for each part of the scorecard. I'm going to give you a specific example with point number 2, structured interviews. We tend to use interviews for everything. but interviews are not really good at assessing certain things. For example, I don't really know if you've got good mechanical aptitude by asking you a bunch of questions. I just don't. So an interview, especially a structured interview where I'm going to ask the same questions of every candidate, and they're all based on the job. Structured interviews are great for discerning culture fit and interpersonal capabilities. They're not good for a lot of other stuff. But we tend to assess, go back and look at the questions you ask, and you might discover I'm looking at like 8 or 10 different things in the structured interviews. I'm trying to figure out their ability to manage time. I'm trying to figure out their communication skills. I'm trying to figure out if they fit with our team. I'm trying to figure out if they have good emotional intelligence. It goes on and on and on. So I'll just pick those first two. There's better ways to assess somebody's time management than a structured interview. Because if you ask me about my time management and I'm coached well, or I've done my research on how to answer that question online, I'm going to give you a great answer that could be a complete lie. So my litmus test is this: if I can teach a candidate to game your system, then your system sucks. And I can teach a candidate to game your system with most of your interviews. And I say that broadly without knowing your interview process, because I've seen hundreds of owners, and I know I could teach somebody to game the system. So structured interviews, if I'm using a structured interview to assess somebody's interpersonal skills, because it's a conversation, I can actually assess interpersonal skills with an interview. And if that's one of my key pieces of my scorecard, I want somebody who's easy to get along with and has great communication and interpersonal skills. I can assess that because I say that's important when they go on sites for clients. I can assess that in an interview. Fantastic. Now, if you told me I also need somebody who's got good mechanical aptitude, if it's a trainee or actually understands plumbing, if they're certified, that's one piece. But let's say it's a trainee. Okay, so let's give them some work samples. When it comes to technical things or skills, inviting them to do the work that they're going to be doing is one of the best ways to see, can they actually do it, or do they have the aptitude for it? Whether that be mechanical aptitude, like, oh, seems like they know their way around a welder. That's great. Or even if it's sales skills, I love being able to recreate a client call and see how they handle it. If it's an experienced tech, they should nail it. And if they're a trainee, how are they going to handle that? How are they going to handle a situation, at least showing me that they have the potential, even if they've never done that in the past? Work samples, when you look across industries, are one of the highest, most predictive things you can do. I like to think about, what are the things I absolutely need them to do? And can I give them something that's similar, or that like gives me an indication of how they would operate? If I want to hire somebody to drive a truck, I want to see how you drive a truck, as an example. So what are the things that would show you? If you're hiring me, if you're hiring a trainer or a presenter, I kind of want to see you present some content. I don't want to ask you about how you present content. I want to see how you do it. And oftentimes we ask people about what they can do, and we don't have them show me. So ask them, if you know your scorecard, use structured interviews for like a very specific thing. And then use work samples for other pieces. And then lastly, leverage assessments. I talked earlier about what I called discernment assessments, which is an investment in the person. There's other assessments that are calibrated to help identify like your raw intelligence / your intangibles. Basically, are you going to be a psychotic dumpster fire and you're going to cause massive issues for me and my clients? There's assessments that would help people identify and knock them out. And so I will leverage assessments in key times for people you're like, I think this is the right person. Now let's give them the type of assessment that's going to help me identify, is there some hidden invisible issue that's going to manifest later in a dumpster fire? But again, that might be later in the process. If you can do good structured interviews and invite participation in work samples, you can identify a specific thing for specific parts of your scorecard. And instead of just using one mechanism, typically interviews, to solve it all. Now, some of you might say, hey, I've got my introductory interview, which is kind of it's really my introductory interview. I'll give you an example, is actually a recruiting tool. I'm not selecting them. I'm just trying to get them excited about the opportunity because talent is scarce. Maybe my next interview, I'm really vetting them for their interpersonal skills. And that same day, they're going to do some work samples. They're going to do a ride along. They're going to do a mechanical test. And then at that point, we think they're the right fit. I'm going to call them back for another interview. This is going to be a group interview, and it's really assessing, do they like us and do we like them? And that's the only purpose. And then at that point where we're like, I'm ready to marry you, I'm going to give them an assessment to make sure they're not crazy before I bring them home to mom and dad. Like that's an example of what it could look like. Selection is key. Make it separate than recruiting, and have a key scorecard that determines how you're gonna assess them. And then lastly, onboarding. And I say this because a lot of times we hire them and then we just throw them into the wolves or our process. And onboarding people is more than their technical understanding the process. So many of you use a probationary period. I think it's a good practice. The 3 1-hour interviews they did are nice. The 3-month interview they're about to do before we actually confirm them as a hire are even nicer. And you can set that up yourself or work with an employment agency to create a buffer. There's ways to do probationary periods that minimize, this is all about risk mitigation here. But lastly, so that's easy. Here's the harder part that most people don't do. We don't accelerate their development. We throw them in a truck, we put them on a phone, and we acclimate them to our process, but we don't acclimate them to our culture or give them the tools that are going to help them accelerate their ability to work into the fold. And so this is where leveraging development processes to help people understand themselves and be on the same wavelength as others. If you have a common shared, when we help organizations build a common shared language, I want to be able to invite people into that common shared language to know, okay, I'm gonna understand myself and be able to understand other. Now I understand my motivations. So I use that assessment in my hiring process. Now we're going to review it from an onboarding standpoint. I'm going to take it. I'm going to have conversations with people I am going to work with, and I'm going to ask them, hey, tell me about what motivates you. Because you've used this assessment too. Your team uses this, and I'm going to share my results, and we're going to get to understand each other and learn how to communicate effectively. Because I'm a new person, I don't want to tell you when I don't know something, and this is going to help me get on the same page. So, especially those first 100 days, can we invest into the development of the people so we minimize their risk of early turnover? Early turnover is one of the most costly things that can happen. If you lose somebody in those first 100 days, they've just sucked value from your organization. They've not given you value back. And so how are you helping them socialize into the organization, not just get up to speed on the technical pieces? All right, I threw a whole bunch of things out there. I'm clearly passionate about this. And I think that who we invite into our organization and how we do it builds our brand and reputation and also helps us get the right people for long-term sustainability, especially in a competitive market. So let me pause here. I'm going to leave this on the screen. Let me give you 90 seconds. Could be something I shared, one of the things on the screen, or something completely different that this made you think about. I'm totally open for that. Take 90 seconds and could you put in the chat, which of these things was most important for you in your business and why? Give you 90 seconds, put in the chat, and then we're going to have a great conversation for the rest of our time before we give you some next steps. All right, timer's on. Put your answer in the chat. All right, take another 45 seconds, pop your answer in, and then we'll have some great dialogue to see where this connects to your business. Thanks, Kathy, for starting that off. Take a few more seconds, y'all. Put your answer in. All right, if you got an answer, go ahead and pop it in there. And Kathy, I'll start with you because you've put your answer in the chat. You said, incentivize my team to help with recruiting, onboarding, training, and coaching so candidate succeeds and current team member benefits as well. Leverage assessments. We use some, and we would like to review others to be able to see drive, trust, and sales ability. Love it. Say more about that. And what's top of mind for you? I'll leave the screen up here in case you want to refer to anything, and then Jen, I'll get to you next.
Well, I realize that my team has to be willing to invest in new candidates as well, because they have invested many years of building our culture and our reputation, and they want that maintained. So I want them to get more involved in that process. We tend to hire really well for culture, but maybe not so well for drive and success at the end, like particularly technicians when they get in the truck. So I'd like to be able to figure that out a little bit better too, so that they're not just a cultural fit, managing the tension between culture and results.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That's well said. Managing the tension between culture and results. I love it. Balancing both of those. It's good. Jim, you said providing realistic job previews. We all have ideas of what jobs responsibilities are as an individual, but if the successful applicant is expecting something different than what the job is, it'll be a problem sooner or later. Say more about that. What's touching down for you there?
Well, any type of a position, maybe it's you're hiring somebody to be a laborer, and if I said that to you or anybody else, we all have in our minds what definition of a laborer is. Hey, I'm going to be running errands. Hey, I'm going to be digging on a shovel. Maybe I'm going to be digging a couple hours a day. Maybe it turns out to be 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
And if everybody isn't on the same page, sooner or later, it's a problem for everybody. If an employee's unhappy about something, we're not doing them any good if we keep trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and we portrayed that job or that hole to be a square hole, and it turns out it's round, and we keep trying to get that guy to do what we want him to do after he's expecting something different. Becomes a problem bad deal for him, bad deal for the employer, and a bad deal for the customer. Just everybody's bad experience.
Yeah, that's so well said and spot on. And I find that this is especially relevant in a tight labor market, whether that be just getting labor in general to be laborers, right, to your point, or whether it be finding highly trained, scarce techs. Either way, when talent is tight, we tend to unintentionally overpromise a little bit. And again, of course, there's certainly a recruiting piece where you're essentially marketing to them. I kind of picture there's a parallel here, imperfect with the dating, where it's like you picture the first time you meet somebody. Yeah, you don't want to say, by the way, I occasionally have body odor. Like, no, you're gonna find that out later. Or, by the way, I've got some crazy family members. Can't wait for you to meet them. You're gonna find that out, and hopefully by then you're like, I'm still gonna take you with the package. So you got to put your best foot forward. But at some point, if you don't know that's coming, that is a missed expectation. It sets people up for a miss. So having an appropriate and maybe progressing realistic job preview is good. Each stage reveals a little more. Kathy, jump in.
Sometimes we want to give a potential candidate the vision of where they could go, right? Or the pathway. maybe to our detriment sometimes, because they don't understand it's going to take focus, energy, and effort to get there on their part. So
Yeah.
I think to Jim's point, if you're very realistic about where they're starting out, I think we just need to balance that with what we tell them where they can go. Because, I mean, quite frankly, I mean, Jim can correct me if I'm wrong, but most of us don't want to hire a laborer for life. We have to have that laborer, but we hope they evolve into something more, and then we hire another laborer, right? I mean, Jim, you don't want to keep them digging holes all day long. I mean, their whole career.
In a perfect world, yeah. And then there are some people that I mean, that's where they're good at. And they might even enjoy it, hopefully. Whether it's something that I or somebody else doesn't want to do. Um, it's okay if they want to be a laborer forever, but you're absolutely right. Hey, that's a foot in the door, and just like Kathy just said, it's real easy to talk about that. Hey, this is a foot in the door. Come on into our organization. You work hard. Um, you're going to be someday. You're going to be running a crew, and all of a sudden, everybody thinks they're going to be running a crew 6 weeks from now.
Yeah, see, that's such a great example of saying, okay, it's balancing that. Here's the big picture of where you could go, and here's what it's going to look like the next month, 6 months, 12 months. You know, I've seen organizations where you have opportunity to go from laborer to estimator, for example, and you
Right.
might you go, wow, we went from making minimum wage to 6 figures. And the challenge is that might be the pathway, but it's not there right now. So, hey, here's the opportunity of what you can do, and here's where you're going to start. You're digging holes. Okay, good. Now I know. So yeah.
And making statements like, "Hey, if you work hard, you're going to do great." Well, that's like telling somebody that does a poor job or something. Say, you tell them, "Hey, you got to do better." Well, you're going to have to define better. You got to define what work hard is. Listen, if you work hard, you'll be able to grow in our company. Work hard means you might be putting in a couple extra hours. You might even have to give up something that you'd rather not once in a while. Um, maybe some time, maybe it's whatever it is. You might have to go do a task that isn't what you're hired for, but you've got to be able to do that once in a while if you want to be a leader or whatever the case may be.
A
You just got to
great
be real
strategy.
specific.
And a great strategy for that too, I've seen, is bringing in a top performer in that role who represents your culture, who also works hard to be able to say, hey, I'm bringing in so and so. He's going to walk. I want him to share with you what the day in the life of a laborer is, using that example, right? Okay. And this guy's great. He's getting ready to be promoted, or he was recently promoted. He's going to tell you what happened to him, but also what the reality is. Okay, you're digging ditches for 8 hours. You have occasional weeks you're working 50. To be able to have that person be able to really, somebody who's a great example where they're not going to complain. They're going to be able to tell them, this is what you can do, and this is why I'm here. This is why I love it. But also, let me tell you what I do. Okay, cool. I'm gonna get into this. Now, then you're not making a bad mistake. Again, I recognize in a tight labor market, we just want to focus on getting the close and getting the hire. But doing that at the expense of that long term, it just sets up more problems down the line. Hey, Todd or Robert, I'm curious for you, anything that's grabbing you that sticking inside your heads as you look at this list or think about your own organization? Either, yeah, we did this and this was incredibly helpful for us, or this is something I think we need to press into. Love to hear if you guys are there. All good, Robert. Going once, going twice. And Todd may not be back. Again, all these things matter. My encouragement would be to think about, okay, what's one right next step that would help you? Trust starts at the hiring process. It starts with that introduction. And for some of it, it's going to be more attention to your brand. Others, it's going to be how do you attract people well, set them up realistically, and have that slow shift from marketing into actual hiring. And for others, it's going to be have a very clear scorecard, and don't try to assess for everything all at once. We do something, we all have biases, and many of us do something that's called the halo effect, where you like one thing about the person and you make the assumption that that applies to everything else. So you picture meeting somebody for the first time and they're really warm and friendly. And so you assume that they're also conscientious and organized, they're also driven, they're also. And so that to me is where interviews, I pressed into that, because interview is one of those places it's both effective for the right things, but we can also extrapolate, oh, they must be this because they showed up this way. No, they just interviewed well. Or they didn't interview well, and so I'm going to assume that they're not good at all these other things. And so I like to be really clear. What's my scorecard? And then what's the best way to assess for the scorecard? Okay, I'm going to have an interview focused on culture. I'm going to have an interview focused on sales skills or interpersonal skills. I'm going to have a work sample focused on technical skills. I'm going to have a live role play focused on sales skills. I'm going to do an assessment to just make sure this person isn't crazy. You know, whatever those things are, I'm going to utilize multiple methods for multiple things, in the same way that none of your guys would show up in a house and use one method to assess everything in the house. You have different methods to assess different things. Same thing for hiring. That's my overall takeaway there. And then lastly, when it comes to onboarding, thinking beyond just getting them in the door and putting them on a seat, but how do I help structure and nurture their development so that I can make the most of those precious first 120 days from a culture and a skills standpoint. So I look forward to diving a little bit deeper into all this. I hope this has been valuable for those who are listening and those who get to listen to the recording. I think we had some great Q&A as we went along. I'm going to remind you of an offer from Wild as a Titanium sponsor. We were encouraged by and challenged by Todd to say, hey, add value to the organization. And so one of the things we offer as to those who came to PHCC and these lunch and learns is access to our Wild Trust Index. If you have a team of 10 or more, we can give you a 5 to 10 minute survey for each person that would yield some really rich results on the drivers of trust at the personal, team, and organizational level. We've got Kathy yours ready, so we're going to set up a time to go over that with you. So thanks for taking us up on that. And it's a great chance to say, okay, building trust is one thing. In fact, we have a couple specific pieces in here around recruiting and retention that relate to this conversation today. But it's a starting point for us to be able to show, here's your strengths from a trust standpoint that you can leverage, and here's some opportunities to drive trust either at the personal level, the team level, or the alignment with where your organization is going. And to sign up for that, you can easily just click this QR code with your phone, or you can find the link on the PHCC members site as well. And anything we would the trust index, it's typically a $15,000 product, and it's complimentary for you. So there's value just in doing that. If there's something we discover with you that we can do with you, either one of our services, coaching, or some of our assessments, we are offering a 10% discount for all PHCC members as being part of your ecosystem. And I don't go into a conversation knowing how we can help you. We would do the trust index, debrief it with you, and then it would open up a possibility to say, can Wild help you? I recently had a conversation with somebody who I said, I don't know if I can help you. So I'll be honest, my goal isn't to sell you something. I want to actually know where you're at first. And then if we can help you, we'll talk about a great journey we can take together. Either way, we're here to add more value than we take from your organization. So look forward to that. And then, of course, stay in touch with Todd and continue to find ways to invite others to be a part of PHCC so the value of your membership can grow as the association grows. With that, I'm going to give you back 5 minutes of your time today, unless you have any questions. Thank you for diving in. Great conversation, y'all.
Appreciate your time, Daniel. I do have to drop off for a 1 o'clock Zoom call. So
thanks, Jim. Great to be with you.
Good to see you, Kathy.
All right,
And you,
Jim.
Robert.
See you later.
Bye.
See y'all.
Good seeing you, Jim.
Glad you were on here, Robert.
Yeah, thank you.
Hope to see you again soon.
I will try to be around. It's getting things going.
I know. It takes one step at a time.
Exactly. Yes, ma'am.
All right. See you soon.
All right. Have a good one. Thank you.